what is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess, doing the mostest, She, and we are here with Brilliant Minds Season 2, Episode 6, titled The Doctor's Graveyard. Now, before we get into it, I'm gonna just give you a little preface because we're restructuring some things over here. It's getting to the end of the year, and I'm a rapper, you heard me? And so there's going to be some things going in this episode, and I just want to make sure that I remind y'all over the next few podcast episodes. But if this is your first one that you watch because you watch my Brilliant Minds um, recaps and reviews and you don't watch anything else, so here on the podcast, I have decided to kind of organize the way that I do things and really structure them in a format that helps me keep me in line. Okay. I am my own producer, editor, sound designer, all types of things, manager, publicist, marketing officer. Like, I do it all. And I want to say it started with from where I think it was like the middle of season 3, where so many things were happening at once that I randomly did a recap and a review where I literally just broke it down in like, okay, hey, this is this story, let's talk about just that, this is this story, so on and so forth. And then I was kind of going like winging it basically. And then it wasn't until I want to say the Gilded Age season 3 where I was like, okay, it's way too many characters, way too many storylines going on. I need to be able to deliver this information in a structured way where I'm not necessarily giving you a play by play, but we can at least hit the touch points of the multiple storylines that's going on. And since then, I've kind of been structuring my recaps and my reviews in that way where I give the recap, I give my thoughts, I give my predictions, and then we're moving on. So if you are somebody who's been watching me this entire time, especially from the beginning, but mainly in the last like 3 months, then you've already kind of been experiencing that now. So you might be asking, like, okay, Kivanchi, like, what makes this different? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, we are going to segment them, and each segment is going to have a title. That way, it is very clear of what I'm talking about and what's going to be going on inside of that segment. So, I'm gonna give this spiel for at least all of November, just because I have people that watch me consistently. I have people that are new, and if you're new, welcome. And so I don't want to assume that just because I did it on one video, somebody's gonna see it because I report and review multiple TV shows, and people who watch me don't come for every show that I talk about. So I just have to put that out there. But getting back into Brilliant Minds Season 2, Episode 6, The Doctor's Graveyard. So, our synopsis is Dr. Wolf is haunted by a ghost from his past, and the team at Bronx General takes on a patient who seemingly has come back from the dead. The purpose of this episode and what they aim to do is exploring Dr. Wolf's personal history while dealing with a mysterious patient case that blurs the line between life, death, and medicine. The director is Seth Mann. The writers are Sara Saedi and Will Ewing. And the cinematographer is Claudine Sauvé. I got my iPad here, y'all. It's like a whole thing. Like, look at me getting more professional. Okay, so moving into the recap segment titled As Seen on TV. Okay, a little clever with the scene work here. So we open up this episode with the interns and our one resident that we don't like, Charlie Porter, heading to a haunted house. Now, it's so crazy to me because this is the first time everybody is together again after the announcement of Charlie Porter being basically over them as it pertains to like supervisory chain of command, right? But even though he outranks them at work, he really is that baby brother where your mama be like, sure, you can go to the mall, but only if you take your brother with you. Like, he's so annoying. And they're doing their best to tolerate his existence. Now, I will say, since his conversation with Dana and even getting like talked to about how rigid he is with the patients in previous episodes by Dr. Wolf and Dana herself, you kind of see a little bit more of a pleasant side to Charlie. I won't necessarily say softer, but it just appears as though he's realizing I need them in some way, shape, or form. So by him even being at this haunted house, even though they're like visibly annoyed by him being there, he's making an effort to fit in and to at least slide in their jokes. So with that, you get to see just a little bit more of him. And then just as an actor and what we're seeing with Charlie in these moments, especially throughout this episode, um, is like we're giving him a little bit more than just being like a snake in the grass, right? It feels as though the writers are adding a little bit of a layer to him while keeping enough mystery for us to not trust him just yet. All the while, Wolf is getting hunted by a ghost of his past. So at first, we really don't know who this person is. But later on in this episode, he confides in Carol that he has been having dreams and just been having like weird feelings that's bringing back a case when he was a junior resident. And there was a woman who had a malignant tumor and she ended up dying. Now, we know how Wolf feels about his patients. I mean, the whole reason he's a doctor is so that he could save his dad, who he presumed was dead in the first place. So it makes sense that this is going to come up. But the reason it's coming up so much in this episode is because she died on Halloween. And so, just the framework of this episode and it being a Halloween episode is incredible because when did this premiere last year? I think it premiered in September last year, even though we only had 13 episodes. But they definitely didn't do a Halloween episode. I have rewatched season 1 too many times. Um, there definitely wasn't like a poignant Halloween episode. So seeing that just made it super exciting, especially with last week's episode with the whole curse and everything coming up. So one thing that I think that TV shows are getting away from are just like the holiday themed episodes. Like growing up and watching TV in the 90s, watching TV in the 2000s, it didn't matter if the show was good or campy or weird, supernatural, whatever. Like it didn't matter the genre. You knew Halloween week, every show that was coming out and airing on TV that week had something to do with Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. And it was just one of those things, especially for people who weren't going out on those holidays, to sit in the comfort of their living rooms or their bedrooms with their families, with their friends, whether in person or just over the phone on three-way, okay? Because I'm an old bitch. Um, and you're just watching TV and you're spending the holiday time with your favorite characters. So the fact that Brilliant Minds did this definitely shows like they're making a concerted effort and something that is intentional to kind of bring back what put us in front of cable TV in the first place. So I'm like super loving that. Now, also in this episode, we have 3 primary stories. So most shows, especially with like dramas, you have an A story, you have a B story. But in medical shows, it's actually not atypical to have A through C and even D, or maybe like a C minor storyline. And so in this episode, we have an A story, a B story, and the C story. So the A story is the case, as is every episode, for the majority of the parts, right? In season one, I want to say the one time, like the couple of times where the A story wasn't the case was when Ericka's building collapsed, and the Carol Allison saga and everything that was going on. But we know that the show centers around like neurological anomalies. So the case is the A story. The B story is Bronx General is getting sued, baby. And Josh Nichols coming in as the interim chief of medicine. This is just not good for his mental health, is not good for his stress. Like that is not good. And this hospital is broke too. Like it's just, now is not the time. Okay. We're in a government shutdown. They haven't mentioned it in the show, but like, hello, it's a fiscal year. We ain't got no fucking money. So this is not good. And then the C story, this could have been like a C, C minor, but it's really Ericka. Let me take a drink on that. I've been making these names. So I have Jolliver, which Teddy Sears commented on my comment. He was like, he hasn't heard that one before. So glad to pop your Jolliver cherry, Teddy. Loving it. And then, of course, if you're a Bridgerton fan, you already know that there's a Canthony like couple name on there. Well, we have our own Canthony over here, except instead of a K, it's with a C. And so Tamberla, shout out to you, Tamberla, who posted my post on her stories and was just laughing at the name. So listen, I'm not even one for couple names and ship names, but as I continue to explore, as I continue to allow my nerd to take the front seat and grab hold onto the wheel, I'm really just getting into the silliness of it all. So friendship wise, we got Ericka. Serica, Errol, they don't even make no sense. What are their last names? Kinney and Pierce? Pierce? Penny? Penny. Mm. Boom. So the C story is Carol and Ericka, and I combine both of those because it's not necessarily a lot of meat in this story, but their characters end up converging anyway. And I'd even venture to throw like Dr. Markus in there, but basically the C story centers around Carol and her interactions that's happening in the show. So let's talk about the A story. So we're gonna go over the A story. The B story is like kind of weaved in there. So there will be like some areas where I'm going back and forth. Um Quick disclaimer, I'm recording this, and this is the first time I'm following this format in this structured way, even though I will be posting a podcast, or when you see this, I will have posted a podcast episode on Sunday, October 26th, following the same format. However, I am recording this one on, y'all are watching Tuesday, October 28th, and I'm doing it first. So, y'all are getting more of like the explanation. Okay. Um, so just bear with me. Just like it was when I first started my podcast and I just kind of like grew and changed and figured out what worked, what didn't work. We're kind of like in that phase again. But I love y'all. Y'all are great to me in the comments. So polite, so respectful, even when you disagree. So that's all I ask, you know. I'm always open for feedback. Anyways, getting into the A story. So a man is trying to cheat death, basically. So this guy is brought in and he's basically pronounced dead, right? He's passed out in an ice bath and it appears that he's suffering from hypothermia, which caused a death. Now, shout out to Jacob because is his name Jacob? Yeah, Jacob Nash. Dr. Nash? Jacob? Why is everybody named Jacob? Yeah, it's Jacob. Anyways, so he's like, okay, we're just gonna make sure the body is warm first before we pronounce this guy dead. And sure enough, the guy is not dead. So shout out to you, Dr. Nash. So we find out that this patient has been doing some things that I'm gonna say a few of them are illegal. Um, Definitely unethical and definitely immoral. So he ended up 2 years prior getting a breast cancer diagnosis. And from there, once he was like kind of in remission, he just kind of became super obsessed about his health. Now, a lot of people who end up getting like life altering health news, they do take a lot of drastic changes. Like, I literally just watched 2 back-to-back Tiny House Tour episodes on YouTube, and the Real Housewives wife swap edition, where in both cases one of the people got a terrible health diagnosis, and then it was like, oh, I want a homestead, oh, let's downsize, let's go get into a tiny home, we're gonna grow all our own food, and we're not gonna have any water, and we're gonna do all these other things. And so this type of response to your life and your death staring you in the face is not abnormal. But what is abnormal is when your health becomes so much of an obsession that we end up looking to the internet and start like doing our own at home remedies. And so with this case, we're really looking at WebMD warping into chat GPT medical services at home. And this man, Cyrus, had the nerve to hire somebody under NDAs named Thomas to be legally obligated and sign the contracts to make a choice to aid in this man's obsession with his own health. Unfortunately for him, while even Wolf is like, okay, some of his stuff is rooted in science and rooted in some things that is working, not in this country because it's not FDA approved. Um, it's Charlie who ends up having some really good counterpoints to Dr. Wolf as to like the patient basically hiding other things that is also hiding underlying conditions for his deteriorating health while in the hospital. And so we see this kind of relationship between Wolf and Charlie, where when Wolf first meets Charlie, he don't like him, and he even tells his mama like, why are you sending somebody to babysit me? But over the last couple of episodes, there's been a good bit of like intellectual volley, and it seems like Charlie is kind of finding his way in how to navigate conversations with Wolf that appeal to Wolf's base nature of being hyper empathetic to the patient, while also coming with enough facts that appeals to Wolf's logical, reasonable, and rational side as a doctor taking a bird's eye view to this person's health. So since he was basically ordered um to stop doing unreasonable tests and taking unreasonable risks with his patients, Wolf is really leaning on his team and delegating and showing himself to be a true leader. And in this, you see better communication between him, his resident, and his interns. And thus, in turn, this empowers them to question, because this is a teaching hospital, and not question in a way that's undermining authority, but you should have a questioning attitude in a teaching thing. And it's called practicing medicine for a reason. So you should always question those things. And so you're really seeing like a lot of healthy questioning and healthy communication amongst the team, but especially between Wolf and Porter. So what ends up happening is, I mean, this man is farming blood from Thomas to put it on his skin and to be youthful forever. And he ends up seizing. And so Charlie and Wolf are really the leads on this case. Dana surprisingly is taking a backseat as an intern and really operating in an intern's place where she's observing a lot of the different things. She's absorbing a lot of the conversation and the different guesstimates of what's actually happening. And she's following Charlie around. So it looks like the outing and whatever bonding and team building um worked with the haunted house. And we're gonna get back to the haunted house. Um but we also know that she confided in him like 2 episodes ago as well. So it makes sense, but you can just see a change in the way Charlie is kind of navigating them as well. And so to kind of see the attending resident intern relationship in this way, um, it makes it more, I don't want to necessarily use the term realistic, but realistic, right? So my father is a doctor, and one of the reasons he doesn't really like to watch medical shows is because the attending or the chief of whatever department is always the one doing everything, and there's never really any delegation, and there's never any situations where you're empowering the people underneath you. But the goal of residency and going to your intern is to learn, and for the chief of whatever or the attending to give them the opportunities to practice the medicine that they spent all of this money and all these years of school on. What that means for patients is, yes, you will be their practice patient, but a lot of times I haven't necessarily seen it in this show. I'm assuming that they're assuming that the audience would know that this is a thing, but whenever you have like interns, students, residents, and stuff like that, the attending will tell them, hey, we are a teaching facility. I have my resident, whatever year. I got my interns, whatever year. They're going to be doing the majority of your care today with me as the oversight. Are you comfortable with that? And for the most part, patients will say yes. At the end of the day, the best doctor was a terrible student inside of the facility. I'm assuming that Brilliant Minds is assuming that we know that, but if you didn't know that, that's kind of how that goes. And so just watching the dynamic in this episode with this case, with it being so complex and being so unique, and kind of cool, as you can see, like Wolf kind of nerding out a little bit to the patient, teaching him some things, right? Um, I thought that the display and the portrayal of the dynamic was finally getting into a space where the focus is not just on Wolf, but on how the hospital runs and how the team dynamics work as well. But through all of this, as Cyrus's health is deteriorating and he ends up with a seizure, they have to figure out, like, okay, what in the hell is going on between the sheets in my home? Well, turns out he had a parasitic tapeworm that ended up causing an infection in the brain. So what he thought was a malignant mass was just a swelling inside of the brain based on just extreme food consumption things. And it's at this point where Thomas is like, you know what? Charlie was right. I'm trying to go out here. I'm trying to drink. I'm trying to smoke. I'm trying to live recklessly before I die. I want to have a life. I want to have a girlfriend. I want to get broken up with. I want to break up with people. And this was one of those situations where you really see Charlie appeal to someone to get the answers that he needs. And I felt like he balanced this. Charlie really don't give a fuck about nobody, but he did take Wolf's approach and his feedback on empathy in order to find out the truth and get the patients to trust him enough to open up. And so he used it as a weapon to get Thomas to open up about Cyrus. But it was effective. And if it's effective, then Okay. And it was no harm to Thomas or Cyrus. It ended up saving Cyrus's life and it saved Thomas's life as he's now released from these obligations of this guy taking his health into his own hands by any means necessary. But along the lines of this A story, we got the B story where Bronx General is getting sued because of the phantom pregnancy case. So, as we've kind of already discussed with the budget and the neurological department taking up a lot of money, um Josh now has to investigate this case to make sure that every test ran wasn't an unnecessary cost, not only for the hospital, but for the patient's family as well. Because at this point, they receive the hospital bill and they're just like, nah, y'all got us fucked up. We're not paying over $100,000 in medical bills. That's a whole other thing when it comes to insurance. But if you remember that episode, it was an episode of mass hysteria. And the way that the parents and stuff were acting, even in this episode, Josh was like, okay, y'all could have pissed on a stick. But the way that the parents were acting about my daughter's ran track and she has a basketball scholarship and she's getting to an Ivy League and all these other things. They pin on a stick wouldn't have been enough for the types of parents that they are, especially because they would have been demanding ultrasounds and blood tests because pissing on a stick is not always accurate. And so he's basically just trying to investigate the case internally to make sure that everything is covered. Now, at the same time, Wolf wants Josh to operate on Cyrus, but Josh has not touched anybody since Benny and Jorge from the last episode. And so this is really the first time that you see Josh's confidence shaken like crazily. Like the very foundation of who he is as a neurosurgeon is shaken. And so he's using this case with being sued as a band-aid to hide the fact that he is afraid to operate on anybody for fear of letting them down. And he's had patients who died in the OR before. But I think like the curse is really getting to him and the fact that this might be one of the first times that he actually made a promise to the family members of a patient and it backfired. We didn't really see a lot of his surgeries before. And when we first met him, he was very cold and callous. In the pilot episode of Brilliant Minds, for the patient who he helped like remove the fact that she had seizures, but he ended up causing her a form of face blindness due to the surgery. He was very callous, he was very cold. He was like, my surgery was perfect, that ain't got nothing to do with me and her being a bad mom. Like it is what it is. And so you kind of watch as he's adopted some of Wolf's empathy and approach to the way that he views these cases and turning these cases into people, but we may be in a space of overcorrection. And so where you looked at them as case numbers and you know schedules on your calendar, you may be doing too much at this juncture to where you're now not performing your job. And I'm not going to be too hard on him because Wolf does the fucking most behind these patients. But he's been doing it for so long. He's kind of learned what his max is and what's not. And so to everybody else, it's way too fucking much. But for him, he's likely made these gross mistakes and felt the way that Josh feels now early in his career. And so now this is the first time Josh is confronted with his feelings in putting faces and names to these cases. Josh is now going to be experiencing something that he potentially could have experienced 20 years prior, but now he's experiencing it later in his career. And Wolf notices this, um, and also notices like he's following like this whole superstition thing, and he really thinks that he's cursed. And Wolf is just like, listen, you're a great surgeon. Let's focus on the patient that's alive and do your job. Now, there's two things in this B story that one pissed me off and the other one annoyed me. So let's talk about what annoyed me. Wolf expected Josh to do the surgery, but somebody else was scrubbed in. Now, eventually, Josh did do the surgery on Cyrus, which ended up finding the infection and the whole thing. But like Wolf, he just told you that the board wants him to start offloading his cases in the first place because he is stepping in at interim chief. And so I feel like Wolf's determination, he's unable to put like Wolf is unable to reel himself in, and he's not really seeing and paying attention to the fact that Josh may be overwhelmed. And that's just a simple case of like not reading the room. And so I felt like it was a bit insensitive for Wolf to want him to scrub in on this case. And ultimately, he didn't coerce him, but he gave him a pep talk that ended up putting Josh in scrubs. And yeah, I just feel like Wolf was just a little insensitive, a lack of self-awareness in that. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the pep talk, Josh needs a fucking break. Like, it is what it is. The second thing, the flirting. Y'all are pissing me off. Wolf says the only thing you're cursed with is those broad shoulders. So you're telling me that he noticed Josh when he was half naked in the last episode and didn't say nothing. But now he's in here fully clothed with his doctor's white coat on. And you want to slide that in. And again, we're sliding it in and we're not doing anything with it. Y'all are let me because y'all pissing me off. Y'all pissing me off, man. Okay, I'm gonna wait till the next segment. Anyways, that was a thing that happened. I'm unhappy. And I was talking to my friend about it, and she was like, friend, it's only been 5 episodes. I don't give a fuck. I said they got until episode 8. So in season 1, it was episode 70. Episode 7, the man from Grassi, is when he was like, hey, that fine ass, tall ass 6'4" surgeon is into you. And Wolf was like, me? No. I can't even see him for real, for real. And then at the end of that episode, he kissed him in the street. And then in episode 8, they was making out and getting it on all over the hospital. So y'all got till season 2, episode 8 for something to happen. Like, I don't care. Y'all need to do something. I'm like, if we get to episode 9, if I come back here on episode 9 and they haven't done anything, I'm flipping the fucking table. Like, right now, there's not even any yearning or any like, oh, I don't like a lot of couples. This is one of 3, and I've said that before. It's one of 3. What the fuck are we doing? Anyways, and so in this episode, we see Josh go and visit Jorge, and he's shaken. He's shaken, and this is just a Josh that we haven't seen since Wolf never told him how he felt, and when Wolf stood him up and put that suit back in his office. So really taking a chip at Josh's cockiness and his confidence. Definitely excited to see where this goes, because this kind of humanizes him in a way. And for me, I feel like the glitz and glamour of Josh is fading, and he's just a regular person. And so I definitely wonder if this same type of process and realization is going to happen with Wolf. Because, like I said, Wolf charging the office, he's like, what are you doing? Like, you're fucking Josh Nichols. You got big hands, large shoulders, and you're the best surgeon in here. So get your ass in there and scrub in. And so it's like, does Wolf see him as this beacon of perfection? And if so, will Josh confide or make a mistake that makes Wolf actually see there's a lot of pressure on him and we might need to make our expectations of him as a human being with emotions realistic? So, more to come on that. And then that brings us into the C story, which ain't got shit to do with nobody else. In the C story, honestly, I enjoy it as the comedic relief because in the C story, we find that Carol is definitely afraid of clowns. And honestly, with this clown in this episode, I would be too. Listen, listen. We missed Dr. Markus last episode, and everybody, all the interns was in this episode. And so, they're like, hey, Dr. Pierce, there's this patient. If you can go check on him. It was a crazy incident. We had to lock him up. This is a little bit of 5150, like it is what it is. And so the only reason she's at work is because her and Morris used to have Halloween tradition. They would dress up, they would have a party, they would do everything. But, they're divorced now. And so she's like, I just need to take my mind off of everything as I try to like figure out what my life is outside of my marriage, outside of being a wife. She pulled up to the door, saw the fucking clown, said, hell no. So she goes and get Dr. Markus. He was like, you told me that you needed some extra hands for a consult and trying to goad me into thinking that maybe I might want to go into neuropsychology as a profession, but I'm feeling that you're terrified. So what the fuck are we doing here? And she's like, no, 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 like it's cool, it's cool, it's cool. And she goes and looks in that window and it was like super dark in there and the clown shows up on the TV screen, like on like at the door in a little square. And she was like, oh hell no. And she takes off running. So Dr. Markus just standing there with mirror touch feelings of just horror. And she's running down the fucking hallway. Like I genuinely enjoyed that part. And I'm just enjoying Carol unraveling in the best way. And I know unraveling when it pertains to people seems like somebody going unhinged and losing control. But when you think about like this blanket, right? And you're like, oh, the knot is unraveling. It simply means that it's coming apart. Is it torn? Is it damaged? Is it anything like that? Oh no, I can put a knot back in it. I can put it back together. It's just simply the act of taking it apart. And so when I think about the unraveling of Carol, I'm simply thinking about like we met Carol who had such a sense of self, such a sense of duty, such a sense of identity, even in the middle of a divorce. Her identity as a doctor, her identity as a wife, her identity as a mother, what it was like going through postpartum depression, what it's like going through the medical board and having your integrity and your license um questioned behind a patient, to seeing her now not know what she's doing. And so in that, in the unraveling, there's just a freedom in which Carol is operating, which again, I don't know that she is aware that she's experiencing these things. And that is like the best part of divorce and the best part of like finding yourself post divorce is a lot of the best things that end up happening to you are things that you have no idea that's happening. Um and you kind of resign to things being out of your control, right? Nobody wants to get a divorce. And so when you get a divorce, you're just like, damn, I couldn't control this and all these other things. What do I do? What do I do different moving forward? And so it appears that moving forward, Carol's just like one day at a time, one case at a time. Um, and in that, something very beautiful is happening with her character. And I love that a lot. Which brings us to the Ericka of it all. Ericka sees Sam in the hospital and it's like, girl, leave this man alone. And even Sam was like, girl, are you stalking me? But I love that Ericka was just like, sir, you was trying to beat me with an IV pole. So like, paging Dr. Strong, maybe I'm the one who should be scared of you. And it kind of made this, it created like a relief for both of them because we see Sam as more of a representation of the things that Ericka is avoiding in her own life through his schizophrenia. And we already know that Erica's kind of leaning on, if I can help him, then I will be healed. But it doesn't work that way. You're going to ignore your own problems and project onto other people, and that's not how healing works. Help them, but also help yourself. And so I love that in this episode, they end up being in the elevator. It was a whole fucking event. And I'm just like, Ericka, girl, every time you're around this man, y'all be triggering each other. When we gonna do something smart? Anyways, she's sitting somewhere and Jacob finds her and she finally lets him know that she's struggling and she's been taking benzos every day since being in Mexico, and it's not prescription regulated at all. And I love that Jacob was just like, as a doctor, we need to wean you off because ending it abruptly will cause more damage, not only psychologically but physically as well. But I love that how he was like, at her as her friend, she needs to get help. Now, in this episode, she does go to Carol and she's like, I need your help. But is it her specifically? No, it's Sam. But again, seeing as Sam is like an extension of her own issues that she's avoiding, and Sam being somebody who is adamantly against seeking help and receiving help, watching him look at Carol and try so hard to explain what he's going through, knowing that he's been through doctor after doctor after doctor that just looked at him as a lost cause, and him vocalizing, will you help me? I need help. I think that Ericka seeing the male version of herself, somebody who is struggling but is too prideful to admit that they need a helping hand, I think this is going to open up the thing that I've been wanting the most in Ericka. And I'm just loving that what I talked about in episode 2 and 3 is coming to fruition in episode 6, where we're finally stretching Ericka as a character and really getting into, like, what do you have? What do you have? You have subcutaneous, which is like the most underlayer, and then you have the dermis, and then you got the epidermis. Is the epidermis the outermost layer? Somebody else tell me. Anyways, the 3 layers of skin. So I feel like right now, before, Ericka had armor on, but right now we're taking a good examination of. Damn, I think the dermis. Where my phone at? I think the dermis is on the outside. 3 layers. The 3 layers of skin. Oh, epidermis. That's right. So yeah. So now we're looking at her epidermis and we're like, sis, you're a little ashy. Let's take care of that. And so we're opening that. Somebody gonna be like, oh my God, you're so racist. Why did you say ash? I mean, listen, I'm Black. The first thing we notice on other Black people is, did you put on lotion? I don't know, like, did you put on lotion, girl? Anyways, and so I'm really loving that. But what I'm also loving even more is that with this case and getting a lot of Carol, Ericka, and I say a lot loosely, it's only the 6th episode. I think Ericka might find that she's better suited in psychiatry than neurology. And I've been talking every episode about the interns really being like, what is my vocation? What am I here for? Why do I want to be a doctor? And I think in everything that's going on with Eric, everything that she's ignoring, but the way that she cares so much about Sam and getting help, I really feel like we can see an Ericka interning with Carol at the back half of the season through getting help herself. So I'm really hoping that between episode 7 and 8, we see Ericka finally getting help for the thing. Wolf has called it out. She's finally told Jacob. Jacob is letting her know she needs help. But in that, I'm hoping that she really does look at psychiatry of it all and realize that she can help with the brain and neurological anomalies in a completely different way than what she may have planned for herself when going into and coming out of medical school. So there's that. Brilliant Minds, Season 2, Episode 6, The Doctor's Graveyard. And now we're going to move into the segment that I call Behind the Lens, where we are going to discuss some strengths and some weaknesses of the episode, as well as the direction and the cinematography, and how that all ties in together to tell the episode. This is going to be episode specific, not indicative of what I feel and think about the series or the season overall. And we're going to be doing this moving forward. So not just this show. Okay. So let's get into it. So first I want to talk about the strengths of this episode. I felt like for a Halloween episode, the tone of it was so fun. It was so playful. Going back to the haunted house, I loved how it opened up with something that was so just like, oh, we're doing this team building exercise. Let's all go to a haunted house. It is what it is. But where the characters got trapped was a foreshadowing of the things that they're dealing with internally. And so it was definitely just a metaphor of what's going on with the patient, specifically Dr. Markus and Ericka. One of the things that Jacob brings up to Markus in the room of like a mini mirrors is he was like, oh, you have mirror touch and you're in here with mirrors. Is this what it feels like to be you all the time? So we've discussed Dr. Markus's mirror touch syndrome, and we know sometimes it can be overwhelming, but this was a visual representation of what it's like when he's overwhelmed by so many different emotions he doesn't have an anchor. So I'm definitely curious to see if this comes up in the next episode because they focused on him specifically inside of the haunted house. Of course, with Ericka, it was about being trapped, which sent her back into the elevator of it all, which we ended up highlighting and focusing on in this episode. So I just liked how it just was like such an overt Halloween episode, but it really peeled back the layers on how the most horrific things and the scariest thing that's going on in our lives is the things that's actually going on in our mind. The thing that no one else can see, that we torture ourselves with over and over and over. And it will constantly remain our monster until we shine the light on it by sharing with the people who love us and the people that we love. So I just really loved the framework of this episode. Going into like looping the connection between Wolf and Charlie. So towards the end of this episode, we see like Wolf, the case is done, everything's good to go, it's solved. And Carol mentioned, she likes going out on Halloween, but she didn't want to do it, so she came to work. Wolf never went to any of her parties because he refused to dress up. So having him bring costumes to the hospital to make his best friend feel better, and then it being the Spock and Ahura from Star Trek costumes. He played Spock in 2009 film and the two follow-ups in 2013 and 2016. So it was just like such a great nod to his filmography. But also getting back to like the friendship of it all between the both of them. And just the fact that was black in Star Trek. Like, this was like a historic, monumental thing for the culture. And what better way to represent this and just kind of like pay homage to so many different things in that final shot with them in the elevator than two people who are not only best friends in the show, but best friends in real life, embodying this and stepping into their old shoes and then just stepping into the shoes and the representation of our ancestors who came before us in the TV and film industry. So I just thought that was so lovely and just the beautiful accent mark on the episode. And then another strength that I like is the connection between Wolf and Charlie. So one of the last shots in this is Charlie is making plans with somebody. He's like, hey, I'm gonna be there in 30 minutes. And as he's getting undressed and closing his locker, we see the same ghost woman that's been haunting Wolf in the reflection. And so we know based on Charlie's reaction that he is haunted by this same incident. And so now we're getting into like, what the fuck does Charlie have to do with Wolf? And why is he here? And I think in this episode, it's like the perfect time to tie that in into the narrative and into the storyline. As far as the things that I felt like were weaknesses, in this particular episode, I did feel like we were oversaturated and there was way too many storylines to follow in a single episode. I think that we could have done without whose storyline? I think we could have gone without the clown situation, and Carol could have just come in and just consulted with Ericka on Sam. I think we could have removed that. And I get it broke up the seriousness and it provided a comedic element. But when you look at the case, I mean, we can't get rid of the case. And I would say either get rid of that or get rid of uh the hospital being sued. At least in this episode, we could have just had Josh dealing with the insecurities based on the last surgery that he did. And in that, we probably could have got more of Josh spending time with Jorge and getting him to vocalize some of the things to an unconscious Jorge that he has not vocalized to Carol or Wolf. That way we can get an emotional read of what's really going on and why he truly has not stepped back into the OR. And so because it was really like a lot going on, it just made it difficult to invest emotionally into the characters and the moments that they had. There were some very important moments in this episode, but it was so oversaturated that we couldn't really rest. And I felt like we could have rested on Josh and we could have rested on Ericka a little bit more in that. Then if we would have kind of removed some of those other elements, rested on Josh and Ericka emotionally, then we could have punched up the connection between this patient who died from a malignant brain tumor between Wolf and Charlie. So that whole thing was just kind of like a lot. And then lastly, I'm just kind of, I think it's like a bias, but it is what it is. Again, these are my thoughts. Neglecting Josh and Wolf's intimacy. Oh God. It's like, God, I'm tipsy. Give me a second. How do I put this? They're too sterile with one another. And just a hint of I miss you, whether it's vocalized or whether it's in the camera on an extended look, a lingering touch, an unnecessary excuse of being in each other's space, something. Like them getting together was the highlight of season one. And conversely, their breakup was the highlight of season one. And so the fact that we're ignoring it 6 weeks in, I just don't think we can continue. Again, they got till episode 8. I just don't think we can continue beyond that to ignore it. Even if they don't end up back together by the end of season 2, we need to give attention. We need to fan the flames of whatever it is in them. Whatever it is, whether it's reconciliation, whether it's an argument, again, whether it's the I miss yous, the longing, the yearning, the lingering, neglecting their relationship is a huge weakness for me. And I'm gonna need y'all. I'm gonna need y'all to get to it. And then as far as like the direction and the cinematography goes, so I already said that the director is Seth Mann. So Seth Mann has directed on shows like The Wire, The Walking Dead, Homeland, and Dexter. And now that you know this information, think back to the episode. It makes sense, especially Dexter and The Walking Dead. I love just like the creativity that was brought in from that kind of like supernatural thriller suspense area into the Halloween episode. And it was the perfect person to direct this and really give this episode a different feel. Again, we loved those holiday episodes, and the holiday episodes should feel like they are standalones within the season, even if the storyline is still going to be a through line throughout everything else that's going on. And so as a Halloween episode, I definitely think like Seth knocked it out 10 out of 10 with the Halloween segment. I definitely look forward to Thanksgiving and like food related situations within the ER, and maybe some type of poison that affects cognitive um situations in the brain. Like I just kind of look forward to it, and I hope that we get people who specialize in capturing that type of chaos and tone at the same time through direction and cinematography. And so yeah, the creativity visually with all of the storylines that we had, even though I felt like it was too many. I felt like the director and the cinematographer did an incredible job at blending them seamlessly together. But then making the episode feel like its own thing. So shout out to y'all. Now we're moving on to the segment that I have affectionately titled B-roll. And here we're getting into some speculation and we're getting into some predictions. First, boom, speculations. First speculation that I have is I think that Charlie is related to the patient that's haunting Wolf. Y'all tell me. I feel like we need to get into some familial messiness. And I think that Charlie is related to that patient. Next, y'all, I don't think Jacob is hiding CTE. I think he might be hiding something more. And the fact that we're just kind of getting him like in and out, we haven't really spent time with him at all. We know his backstory, his relationship with his father from season 1, but I mean, you can't diagnose CTE unless you did. But I don't know. He's sharp, but his energy feels low. I don't know. There's something there. And I think he's hiding a diagnosis and he's getting seen at another hospital so that nobody finds out. So, mm. um, I believe if you remember last episode where the end where we're back at Hudson Oaks and Wolf calls Josh and he's like, "Hey, they're not letting me out." But then Charlie was sitting in the office and was like, "Oh, was that Dr. Wolf?" Blah blah blah. I wonder if Josh is also connected to this patient and he was the resident surgeon on her case. The synapses in my brain, the neurons, they're jumping across every pathway, making connections. And I just feel like this patient in this episode that was haunting them, while it was a Halloween episode, is connected to not only Josh, but also connected to Wolf. And as we saw in the 4 months later at the end of this episode, Wolf was very surprised that Charlie showed up. It's just giving that something else is afoot. And while going to my last speculation, Carol is in on Wolf being like some type of undercover cop. I think that Wolf is there investigating the doctor and some of the inpatient mental health practices. But Charlie is going to be the wrench in everything that kind of like upends it all and ends up getting Wolf stuck there while he's working a case. So, how do these speculations roll into my predictions? Well, most of them don't, but I just have separate predictions. I already talked about how Ericka, I feel like she's gonna move into psychiatry instead of neurology. Um, and she may do something that's like a combination of like neuropsych, where she still gets to be involved neurologically. But I think that she should take a look at the psychiatry portion of it all and figure out like how to marry both of the specialties so that it works for her and so that she can make a better decision as far as like a career path goes. I feel like Dana is going to find out why Charlie is there before anybody else is there. With this prediction, I think that she's going to keep it a secret. I think that Charlie is going to worm his way into Dana's life enough to where she develops a rapport to the point where she's going to figure out what's going on, and I don't think she's going to tell anybody until the 11th hour. So, I don't know. They're building a relationship together, and I think that that's an important note um between them. And then yeah, lastly, Charlie being related to the Hudson Oaks whole situation being a surprise revelation. I don't necessarily think that he is related to Dr. Fredericks, but I do think that there's more to the story of the patient that we saw in this and some type of like super long game revenge plot against Dr. Wolf and Bronx General. So that's my B-roll, my speculation, and my predictions. If y'all got some predictions and speculations, y'all already know what to do. Leave them in the comments because I would love to know like what you're thinking. We just 6 episodes in, and it's good. I'm satisfied with the pace, even if everything doesn't make me happy. Now we're going to move into the segment titled Hot Reels, where we are talking about different hot takes, whether it's hot takes from me, hot takes from y'all, hot takes from publications, you never know. Everybody wants to get their opinion out and everybody thinks they're a comedian until they realize that somebody out there is funnier than them. Anyways, so my hot reel about the relationships in this, I feel like ignoring Jolliver is bad business. Not good for the show. I said what I said. It is what it is. Fight me. Another hot reel in the relationships category is what is going on with the ensemble cast. I feel like they're being abandoned a little bit, and we're touching on them some, and then we're moving away. And it feels like we're maybe trying to tackle all of their backstories at one. Pick a character, any character, and let's start peeling back those layers. Like, it's giving ADD. Like, it's giving ADD. We need to do something with the ensemble. We were here, we met these interns, they helped Wolf become a better person. Let's not throw them to the wayside. Okay? Okay. As far as my hot take about the storylines, like I said earlier, I feel like this episode could have done without Carol's fear of clowns, as well as the hospital being sued. Nobody cares. I also feel like there needs to be more focus on Ericka's time inside of the haunted house to tie in with the Sam storyline and confessing to Jacob. Like, I think this is the perfect time to lean into Ericka, especially because out of all of the interns, she's the one that we know for sure to be in a near crisis. So, as far as storylines go, I think we can elevate Ericka up to like a good, heavy, strong supporting role in this season. And then lastly, like I said, Josh shouldn't have even been in Cyrus's story at all. He should have never been involved in the surgery. It didn't even matter. It had no place. It was just like, oh, okay, he did the surgery. Cool. Y'all ain't got no more surgeons. He's busy. He's overwhelmed. And he's experiencing his own crises, questioning himself, which might throw him into a depression. So I just felt like it was unnecessary. And we could have used that time, like I said before, to really lean into the guilt and what really is the underlying motivation behind how somebody who was allegedly so confident has now been shaken. Now, is death something to shake you? Yes. But like I said before, he's experienced it before. So why is this different? And we should have just leaned into that little bit more. But those are just my thoughts. And that is the episode of Brilliant Minds, Season 2, Episode 6, The Doctor's Graveyard. So I kind of did most of my announcements at the beginning, just with like how I'm formatting things. At this point, y'all already know, like, I'm still like in the process of moving, getting things set up. So the background is going to be, growing and changing over time. But I wanted to at least implement the formatting and the flow of my thoughts um beforehand, just so y'all aren't experiencing like drastic changes all at once. This also helps me stay more organized, get my thoughts out, and not have to like deal with my phone. My iPad is literally sitting right here. I made like different slides on PowerPoint with all the different categories. Plug and play, boom, something that's standardized, something that's consistent. I'm all about consistency, not only just consistency in posting, um, but just finding a formula that works best for me and where I can still give you me, give you my personality, but in a framework that also helps me keep me in line. Um, any other announcements? Nothing that I can talk about right now, but I have so many different things in the works. I'm so excited for November, December time frame. I'm excited for 2026. And that's all I can say right now. Y'all know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave comments in the comments box below. If you got people that only want to listen, make sure you share that Spotify and the Apple Podcast link. You can also find me on Instagram. I am fighting a cough right now. Yikes. It's flu season, man. Listen. You can also follow me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast, where I post film and TV news and updates. And it's also linked with my Substack, where I do my written publication and reviews on different shows that I don't talk about on the podcast. So the way that my Instagram is working, sometimes there's going to be independent Instagram posts, and other times I'm going to link you to full articles and write-ups on the Substack, and all of that information is in the bio of my Instagram account. You can also find me on TikTok, where I do short form reviews on shows that I also do not talk about on this podcast. And I also do more of my movie reviews on TikTok as well. So if you want to get more into like the movie side of things, you can head on over to TikTok. And lastly, you can find me talking my shit on Twitter at Kivanchi. And I've actually made a Twitter for my podcast. It is called, so it's still called So There's That Podcast, but the actual Twitter handle is at pod. So there's that. All one word, no underscore, no nothing. At pod. So there's that. And there, I'm building it up. It's new. I'm basically just posting the links from podcast episodes, posting the links and previews from things that I have written, and just interacting on there. As I continue to grow my brand, grow my reach, I'm also getting things set in place so that when it is time for me to get a team, there are processes in place that they can just walk right in, and they don't have to make it up. They can expand, they can help me, but at least getting a foundation for somebody to walk into, I think that's important. And for me, as somebody who's built this from fucking scratch, from zero on all of these platforms, it's important for me to do all of the hard work and the grunt work so that I can make it easier for somebody else. So that's my motivations, that's my intentions behind everything that I do. And it includes this podcast. And so with that, I am going to make an attempt to finish this Prosecco, and I will catch y'all in the next podcast episode.